My name is Harvey Rubalcaba. I'm badge 622. I've been with the Irving Police Department since 1988. I was going to talk about Glenn Holmes. I met Glenn at the early part of '89. I just completed the academy and I was assigned to him as a recruit. He was my first training officer. We quickly became close friends and remained close friends until his death in '93. Glenn, what stands out the most to me about Glenn is if you wanted to describe him, he was a very gentle person. He was a fitness nut. He worked out all the time. He was one of the, fit guys. He was going to TAC. He did, in fact, go to TAC and enjoyed working out and doing all that kind of stuff. Kept his body, his mind right and everything. But he was very gentle. He wasn't that guy that was over the top, He was very gentle. He spoke very softly. It was surprising to hear him talk out of that body that he had. You expected somebody more gruff, more authoritative, and it just wasn't him. He was just he was a gentle person. I can remember he had a big scar over one of his hands, and when he was a child, he had burned it in one of those irons that you iron clothes with, and he had got his hand stuck in there as a little kid, and he had this scar that went over the top from the skin grafts and everything. And I don't know if it's just out of habit or something, but he would always move his hand, manipulate his hand. It was just kind of a characteristic of his that he would move that hand. I can remember him doing that. At my house, I have a round frosted glass in my front door, and when Glenn would come over and knock, I could still see him running his hair through his hands in the frosted glass of the window, and I don't know. I still see that sometimes. We became friends. Our families were real closely intertwined. He loved my mom's cooking. Him and Kathy became very good friends. When he went through a divorce, he'd come over and talk with me and stuff, and I could only take so much of that. So I would go out in the garage and work, and I'd come in at 1 o'clock in the morning, and he'd still be on the couch talking to Kathy, and she was there for all of that. And when he met Christy, all of that stuff, he'd come over and sit on the couch, and again, I'd go out in the garage because he was on our phone talking to Christy, like little high school kids or something. But him and Kathy, they were very close. Him and my kids. My kids were, 10, 11, 12 then, and he'd come over with plastic guns, and they'd play cops and robbers, and he'd run up the stairs, and they'd chase him, and he'd jump over the landing and get away from him and stuff. That was him. He was very playful. He loved kids. Of course, he had Ryan and Heather of his own, but they were very little. Even when he passed, they were very young. Glenn, he loved his job. We would, when something happened, we were on opposite shifts. He had gone on to TAC. When something happened, I'd call him or he'd call me, and it would give us a lot of pleasure to wake somebody up. If I got a good arrest or he got a good arrest or something. If we called him and he was asleep, and to tell him about it, or him to tell me about it, that's how we pushed each other's buttons and stuff. After he, actually the night that he got killed, he had just given me a surprise 30th birthday party in April, and there was a guy up here. First time I'd ever seen it done, but he was called the Baker's Man, and he would airbrush the cakes, and they were very realistic. And I had a '57 Chevy I was working on. Still had primer spots and stuff on it, and Glenn had that cake done like my '57 with it looked exactly like it with the primer spots and everything on it, and just totally blew me away. I had no idea that was going on. But anyway, that night that Glenn got killed, I was working on my car and I was lowering the front of it a little bit. And I was out there till about 1 o'clock or so. And I was going to call him. And I thought, no, I'm just going to let him see if he notices on his own, that I've done something to it. And I'd taken a bath and gone to bed. And the phone rang. And it was John Shingle. And he said I needed to get to the hospital. So when I got to the hospital, Kathy and I, on the way up there, we were kind of, laughing at Glenn because we were kind of laughing because he's not going to be hurt. We're going to do that. Just thinking of some little prank to pull on him. But when I got to the hospital, Parkland Hospital, I saw Scott Tyne, and he was in the vestibule going into the emergency room, and Scott was just bawling. And I could see him, and I knew instantly that Glenn was gone. And Scott turned around, and he saw me, and he looked at me, and he said, "I'm sorry." And I didn't go in. I didn't ever go in. Kathy went in. And I sat outside, and I waited for I just sat outside. And his mom came up, and Sally and Sal, his dad, they came up. And Sally was, she was all in a tizzy. She was like, "Oh, where's he at? Where's he at? How is he?" And I had to tell her that he was gone. And she lost it. And Sal, it was awful. But anyway, I don't know what else to tell you about Glenn. He was just he was a golden guy. He was very, like I said, he was a very gentle individual. And he cared about his friends. He cared about the department. He cared about his appearance. And that's why he was always stroking his hair in my frosted glass of my window. But he was I see him in some of the young guys here at the department. It's just kind of fun, but things that they do and with their mannerisms and stuff. I've never forgotten him. That's how awesome that he was.
Hi, my name's John Mitchell. I work for the Irving Police Department. My career began in September of 1989, and one of the first officers I met was Officer Glenn Holmes. I met Officer Holmes while at the training academy. He was a defensive tactics instructor, OC spray instructor, and taught several other classes to our rookie level class. Glenn was one of those individuals who just, when he walked in a room, you knew that he was present. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way or an egotistical way. He just had a command presence, a confidence about him. He was tremendously kind, yet very thorough and professional, had no issues being stern when it called for in the classroom. But there's something that's a little bit deeper for me with the loss of Glenn. Glenn and his wife Christy were married on the same day that my wife and I got married, and there was always that personal connection. And then about 4 years, well, that's not correct. About 2 years after our marriage, after our wedding date, is when Glenn was killed in the line of duty, and I was one of the first officers on scene to arrest the individual that ran him over on the highway. That's something that has stuck not only with me but with my family over the years. We certainly try to make it a point to contact Christy on our anniversary date and just remind her that it's not lost on us what she's experienced. But the other piece of that is I just remember Glenn, even after we got out of the training academy, when he would show up on a call, you just knew everything was going to be okay. He was just rock solid individual. He was fair. like I said earlier, but he was also stern. You just knew when he showed. I remember many years ago, I heard some officers talking about, it was the Hollywood shootout, and one of the officers that was pinned down, when the LA SWAT team started arriving, one of the officers that was pinned down, he made the comment, it was as if John Wayne had just rode up on a horse. He knew that everything was going to be okay. And if I was going to say anything about Glenn's career and what it meant to me is I distinctly remember the same feelings. I'd be on a traffic stop, Pioneer Estrada, Esther's area, and Glenn worked that area as part of the SWAT team. And I remember when he would show up on the traffic stops to back me up, not because I called him, just because he was in that area and that's who he was. I just remember that feeling of calmness, knowing no matter what may come, everything was going to be okay. So the loss of Glenn not only affected me personally, it affected this department in a very deep way, and certainly his wife, who worked here for many years. He's missed tremendously.
My name is Stephen Juncker. My badge number is 531. I retired from the Irving Police Department in April of 2019. I spent 34 years and 4 months with the Irving Police Department. I started in January of 1985. One of the first things I remember as a rookie is coming into work one evening, and another young officer that was just about 13 badge numbers ahead of me. I was 531, he was 518. Came over and introduced himself to me. His name was Glenn Holmes. That was our first interaction. That was one of many interactions over the years that he and I had together. But the one thing that always stood out about me, or about Glenn, was his kindness. His kindness to every young rookie, even though he was a rookie, that he would share and acknowledge them when they would walk into the briefing room. Scared, nervous, starting a new career, and he always took the time to stand up, go over to the door, and shake their hand when they walked in, and that always stood out to me about him. We worked on the same shift together for many years. In 1989, he got transferred to the SWAT team. I followed in January 90, at which time we were both on the SWAT team. But in our years in patrol together and working side by side, joining beats, Glenn was a fabulous cop, one of the best ones we had. My nickname for him was On View Felony Holmes, because it was almost like every night he was getting a felony arrest, making that traffic stop that led into a chase, something where he was arresting something or somebody for a felony crime. And so that kind of became the joke between he and I, is that I called him On View Felony Holmes. At one point, one night, Glenn actually did CPR on a gentleman that had had a heart attack. And Glenn was that kind of caring guy where he does CPR on him, brings him back. And Glenn actually went to the hospital the next day just to check on him, just to see how he was. Where a lot of cops would do it, go on about their day, and never even acknowledge that something else had even happened. Our lockers were across from each other. We became really brothers in blue, if you could say it that way. But it wasn't just on work, it was off work. We both had small kids. They were all young, and we used to go to the park together on our days off together. We had the same days off. And we'd go to Fritz Park, and the kids would play on the swings, and he and I would sit there and talk about work and all these different things that we shared in our off time together, dinners, lunches, time together with our kids, whether even it was going to the police supply, just to go look at new things. We always carried the same weapon together. We always liked having the same ammo. We actually split time doing some of our own, making our ammo for our weapons, because we like to go shoot together. It was one of our hobbies that we had together. Worked out together. That was another hobby that we shared, was we would meet before work and work out. When we went to TAC together, our lieutenant was Hugh Corbin, and he was our commander in patrol. And he took Glenn to TAC. Subsequently, I went to tactical also. And we had great times together. Car chases together, fights together, assist officers together. I remember one time he got into a chase throughout the back station where somebody was shooting at somebody as he was coming to the station, and I didn't have a gun because my gun was locked up in the jail. And I jumped in his car and had to borrow a gun from him as we did a felony stop on the car that we took down the street from the station. So those are just kind of fun things that we did together, we had together. In July 3rd of 1993, we were assigned to work DWIs. We weren't happy about it because we had smooth cars. And he was assigned 114 and I was assigned 183. A little bit after 1:30 in the morning, a call came out of a lady hitting a cow on 114. And he jumped the call because he was on 114. He was trying to get there before somebody else could get hurt or be in another accident hitting this cow that was now dead on the highway. And so he set out a flare line, blocking off the middle lane, the outside lane to get people to go by. And as he went to talk to the lady that hit the cow, a truck driver came through and hit him. And the lady got on the radio saying they had an officer down. And I remember that was the darkest time of one of my nights that I can remember in my life, was driving to that scene because we knew that he was hurt. She had said that there was an officer down. We got there, you know, he was severely injured that we could tell. And I remember riding in the ambulance with him to the hospital. I did CPR on him all the way to the hospital until we got to the emergency room. And for you guys that know, Rick Henderson was a young rookie. And he actually came in and took care of me. And I'll never forget Rick for that night because of losing Glenn and what I'd been through that night with him. And then having Rick step up as a young rookie going, hey, here's a veteran guy who's seen some bad stuff tonight, and took care of me. And you know, what's unfortunate as cops is not being able to show emotion sometimes and having to hold that in. And when we had the funeral and his kids were there, his children, Heather and Ryan, were both at the hospital, and seeing the looks on their face and his wife, it was just horrible for everybody to go through. And at the funeral, our entire SWAT team got up to help give the eulogy for him. And I remember being able to cry at the funeral because you couldn't cry anyplace else. And his locker was across from mine. And when he and I would sit and talk prior to our shifts, that's one thing that I really missed when I came back to work after he had passed, was being able to sit down and talk to my friend about our days, our nights. And I remember sitting there crying because I missed him so bad as I sat there at our lockers looking across at his empty locker. And it was just, you know, it was a hard time because of all the things that he and I had been together. I was in his wedding. We took care of each other's kids. You know, it was just a horrible, tragic moment over somebody drinking and driving. And if that one person had not, you know, that night drank as much as they did, then he could still be alive today. But, you know, we can't undo the past. We just have to move on from it. But, you know, the one thing I've thought about over and over the last couple of days about him, and I can't say this word enough, was his kindness. At scenes when he would talk to people, talk to, again, the young rookies, and how he treated everybody. The word kindness is the ultimate word I could use for him. I mean, besides being the ultimate cop and learning from him and watching the things he did as a cop, even though he was just a few years or a few months senior than me, amazing guy. You know, I have a huge hole in my heart because I miss him every day.